welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Francesco Siddi. I work as a production manager at the Blender Animation Studio. Today I'm here to talk about how we make films, how we do it with Blender, how we work with an open content creation pipeline, and we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff. So before everything, I'm going to show you a little reel of our latest works. So enjoy. Oh, should actually play. So let's see. It looks like the video is not playing, which we just tested. So
falling down. I should have stopped, but I do not know how. Just for now, let's make things right. Have some fun, or at least we'll try it. You got your truth, and I got mine. So what the use of blowing my mind? Some kind of game where we both lose. Should I blame it if it's not you?
all right. So has any one of you ever seen any of those movies before? Okay. Does anyone know what Blender is? So some people here actually kind of maybe heard the name Blender, but they don't really know what it is. Okay, that's cool. Who knows what the Blender Open Movie is? Okay. And I think maybe everybody knows what the pipeline is, but then I think that since there were 3 people who knew what a Blender Open Movie is, an Open Movie pipeline is a subset of that. So we are going to get to that. So from the top, what is Blender? Blender is a full 3D content creation suite. So it covers all the aspects of the 3D creation pipeline. And it was born in the late 90s as an in-house tool in a little film studio in the Netherlands. And since then, it went through a lot of iterations, a very interesting story. But eventually, in the early 2000s, it became an open source project. And since then, it has grown exponentially, and it has reached out, and it has been used in all sorts of industry for all sorts of things. And up to this day, it really thrives as a very healthy and big open source project. Blender has been used for, Emmy Award-winning TV series, Hollywood movies, from hero shots, main shots, invisible visual effects stuff, The Man in the High Castle, the Amazon series, these impressive digital sets and VFX shots made entirely with Blender. Title sequences from Hollywood movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, XXX, Wonder Woman, the European Space Agency. They make internal training material with Blender. They also make high-quality visualization content for the public. This is from a video they made about space debris. Google Expeditions is a VR experience designed for classrooms where with a simple smartphone and a cardboard viewer, the students, they can enjoy these faraway places and have a very immersive and enjoyable learning environment. NASA, the Jet Propulsory Laboratory, they use Blender to create assets for the Experience Curiosity website. So it's like as an online real-time exploration that revolves around the Curiosity rover. And this was all the assets were entirely made in Blender and then were published with the Blend for Web online, so that actually people could play with it. And of course, Blender is used for games. And this is Midoki Studio is a game studio that uses Blender next to all their other tools, and they make award-winning games. They get featured in the front page of the Apple Store. And again, they use it really as next to any other tool, and they get stunning results. There are countless game studios that use this. Actually, this talk is in the game track, so I don't know if everyone is here with high gaming expectations. I'm not going to talk a lot about gaming, so just a little heads up. If you guys want to be upset and leave, this is a perfect moment. Blender is very big in 3D printing as well. So it's used in the medical field for surgical reconstructions. It's used in the Amazonian forest to rescue endangered animals that are victims of poaching. And in this picture portrays Amy Purdy, and she is a double amputee athlete. And in this picture, she is performing a dance with a robot arm. And this is the Paralympic opening ceremony in Rio 2016. So what's interesting about this picture is that her dress, designed by Danny Peleg, has been 3D printed, and it was made with Blender. All this is not to tell you about how Blender is a special tool and how Blender is cool. It's actually to show that Blender is out there like any other DCC, any other content creation tool, and in the hands of a capable artist or a capable scientist or a craftsman, it can lead to great results. And of course, there is something special about Blender, and it's called the open content driven development. And what does it mean? Well, as I was mentioning before, Blender is an open source software that it has a very active community. And part of this, one of the strongest drivers of the development of Blender is a place called the Blender Animation Studio. And it's one of the biggest contributors to the Blender development. And this happens thanks to the open movie models. So an open movie basically is a project that is crowdfunded by Blender fans, Blender supporters, and that allows artists and developers to get together and work on the creation of a short film, for example, which then is released out there to the public with a very permissive and open license. And all the efforts that are devoted to making this film are also shared publicly, and especially the efforts that are done on the software side, they get added to the software itself, which then is released for the public, for everyone. So some people that decide to support us, they donate, they pledge, and they get all this content immediately. And the software itself is always for free for everyone immediately as well. And we made a few films like this. We'll go through it. Blender Animation Studio has been making this. We've been making this for 10 years. So this is our place. We are in Amsterdam. And recently, we have changed a little bit the way this is done, because in the first iterations, these movies were made as a one-time crowdfunding project. Which meant, okay, we announce the project, we raise the funds, make the film, deliver it, publish it, and then everything is over. And this is good, but it doesn't lead to a lot of continuity. And to raise the bar, to raise the quality, you need to have a more stable team. You have to have more continuous efforts going on all the time. And so that's why we launched a new iteration of our crowdfunding platform, which is called the Blender Cloud, which allowed people to actually stick around. And they had a place where they could access all the work we were doing continuously all the time, and then they could continuously support us. And this has led to a growth and an improvement of our work that was very noticeable. These are some of the people that actually work there. We have a lot of fun. So, very quick overview of the Blender Open Movies. These two guys, they are the protagonists of the very first. It's a very quirky, very weird animated film called Elephant's Dream. It was the very first film made like this. So it's a Creative Commons licensed movie. All the assets of this movie are public and can be downloaded by anyone. This movie can be re-rendered by people. When this happened for the first time, people were mind blown because there was just, okay, so we give you the, we donate something and we get this back. Okay, it's like kind of a strange film, but still, it was impressive. And especially the improvements that the software got, they were massive. Like, it was really something that people didn't even think it was possible. But it was. So it was very successful to the point that it led to a second film. Maybe some of you have seen this, because this bunny is still everywhere. It's crazy. Like, you go on, a web player websites, and they're demoing their web player using this film because they can. It's Creative Commons, so you can use it for doing anything you want. And it was, in this case, one of the big focuses for the software project was to get better hair rendering. So there is the grass and the fur of this giant bunny, and it was really very exciting for Blender users because they didn't have this feature before, and then you get it. So it was working very well, and the project continued. This is also a few hand-picked ones. The first one is Sintel, which was directed by a very young and promising director called Colin Levy. He was barely 20 at the time, and after he made that, he went on to actually work at Pixar as a camera and layout artist, and later on as a DP. The second one is Caminandes. It's an original series, and it has been featured on the front page of the Walt Disney website, and it's been a very big hit on their YouTube channels. Because, again, they could get the content and they could republish it. Then you have Cosmos Laundromat, which is a SIGGRAPH Computer Animation Festival award winner, and Animago, and many others. And then in the far end, there is Agent 327, which is directed by Colin, who originally directed Sintel, and Hjalti Hjalmarsson. And it's a fresh take on independent 3D animation. This is like a reinterpretation of a Dutch cartoon. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, just to show you like the level at which we are working on now and how far the project has gone. Again, we use Blender for the entire creation process of the film, and this is like a 3-minute teaser for a feature film that we are currently developing, and it was made by a team of 8 artists and 3 developers over the course of 1 year. A lot of development went into Blender, especially in the new render engine side, to really improve motion blur, to improve hair strand rendering, and so on. And since it's only 3 minutes, I'm actually going to show you. So.
This is 327. I'm going in.
Good luck, Agent.
Hello. I was just admiring the art.
Haircut?
Please. Such a lovely place you've got here. Is it usually this empty? Just a trim, please. For his agent, Kratos.
you doing? No, I just wanted a haircut.
Looks like we've found our next recruit. Doctor, carry on with the procedure. We have to make room for Agent 327.
All right. As I was saying, this is a short film based on a comic book that was set in Amsterdam in the 70s, which is not like the Amsterdam where I live in right now, which is almost like a Disneyland. Everything is crisp and clean. Everything is perfect, like a little amusement park. At the time, it was, punks, squatters, drugs. It was very grimy, very dirty, and this secret agent that works for this agency is not like James Bond, like it's not MI6. They're Dutch. It's a small country. They have limited resources. He has to make do with what he has, and he has to make things work. So that we really had to kind of nail both this aspect of the comic, this kind of irony, and also capture the essence of that world. And here is like a little bit of content that shows how we put these things together. And again, the interesting part is that the pipeline is, of course, all built around Blender, and this really leaves the artist free to explore the really important things. So create a really tangible environment, something that you can really see. Every prop belongs there, and everything feels like it's real. And that gives you a very a deep sense of immersion in the space, and you feel that everything has been used and that everything is kind of a little bit broken, and it gives it that polish and that level of quality that you need to make you feel like you are right there. And the same kind of research and investigation has to be carried through the development of the character. So in those little pictures, you can actually see original comic books shots, and then how this was translated into actual 3D poses. And this kind of research, again, is first on a very technical level, and then it quickly becomes an artistic challenge to really find what the character is made of. What are his expressions? What makes him unique? So we build these pose libraries, these reference sheets that are used to build and pose the character in a consistent way across multiple shots, so that when you're actually looking at the film, you still see always the same character. And this is a very deep investigation. This is something that takes a while to do for the lead animators and the artists, and working together with the riggers to make sure that everything deforms and that everything works in a perfect way. This is a little collage. These were very early tests where we were switching between this 3D version and the comics. These are actual comic strips. So to really see how it would blend between one and the other, how faithful this character still remained. And this is the very, very first animated tests with the agent character. The shot is not even in the movie, of course. So it's really like you see animation, and then you get the lighting, and he doesn't look the same as he did in the end of the film, because there was a lot of evolution, a lot of iteration. And again, it's both an artistic and a technical challenge, because we always develop new features for the software. We keep pushing it to get the best looks and to get the best performance, which then leads actually to the pipeline. So maybe this is the more interesting and more technical part. So does everybody know what a filmmaking pipeline is? Like, is everybody familiar with the concept of a pipeline? Okay, half of the people. A pipeline is basically a set of steps and of processes and tools that are combined in a certain way to build a workflow. No? A pipeline is something that things flow through, so that then you start with nothing and you end with a film. What is special about our pipeline is that it's free and open source, and we will see how. So this is how a typical pipeline diagram works. Again, these are DCCs, content creation software, Houdini, ZBrush, Maya. Like maybe somebody heard of these softwares for 3D modeling, lighting, rendering, particle simulations, video editing, and so on. And this is how normally a pipeline is done. Very specialized artists work in different steps to put together their part, which then in the end gets all merged by some more specialized artists until the end of the movie there is an edit. And this is how big films are done. This is also how small films are done when using this kind of tools. And I will now show you how the Blender pipeline works. This is it. This is the Blender pipeline. We use one tool to do everything. It's not really true that it's just one step. Of course, Blender is a little bit bigger than that. And it is made of many modules that allow artists to accomplish the same things they would do with all these different packages, but within the same one. And this is very, very interesting because it allows greater flexibility of where an artist's time is spent, and it gives a possibility of artists and people to actually do different tasks while using the same tool. And this is a time saver, and it makes it very efficient. On the development side, there is a set of libraries that are fairly industry standard, that are also supported inside of Blender. So despite Blender being kind of locked up and being this open source special snowflake, it's actually using very well-known, very well-tested technologies that are out there. So what does this all mean? Well, I'm going to show you, because we have limited time, I handpicked one of the most interesting features that Blender is still developing right now, and that is something that a lot of other softwares don't have out there, which is called the grease pencil. So what you see here is a quad split of a Caminandes, which is an animated episode of the Caminandes animated series. And what is interesting, so here you see different stages at which the movie was done. The bottom one is the final one, and the top left is actually the storyboarding one. What you've seen there, it was some hand-drawn animation that was done using grease pencil. So grease pencil is a tool that in 3D space, it allows you to draw strokes and lines and play them back. So it allows you for very quick previews of your work without having to get into animation. And this is very powerful because being done in a 3D software, it really allows you to layer these kind of things. Normally, this is like a Photoshop 2D drawing kind of thing where you have layers, but it's not like physical 3D space mountains that you can draw, right? So that makes it very useful for a story and for a layout artist because they can get an idea of what they are working with much more quickly. We use the same techniques also for the Agent 327 film, and you can really see how useful this is to sketch out, to block out volumes and spaces, so that then later on when you actually switch to actual 3D content, you already have an idea of the perspective and how things work and how things are laid out. As a final interesting example, I will show you this, which is a Kairos tribute animation. So this is an animation by a French studio called Studio La Cachette from 2013. And a Blender artist went in, and he just replicated that sequence. And as you can see, what you can do is you just can manipulate these 2D strokes and combine them with like 3D a particle effect. For example, there is like just a volume with a particle emitter, and it just creates these puffs of smokes, and it just layers it on top of the animation. And as you can see, this is a fully 3D scene, and we use this camera to flow through the scene, and we get all the perspective for free. So if you ever try to draw this kind of thing and to get the shadows right, that is an immensely complicated process, and it can be greatly sped up by having basic geometry as a 3D reference, and then you can actually work on it afterwards and just tweak it and take care of the design, the look, the textures, but not bother too much with the perspective drawing. And this is, of course, very powerful. Right now, Grease Pencil is being further developed for the next release of Blender, and there is a new open movie, like the agent that you have seen, that is being made entirely with this technique, with the sole goal of pushing the tools to deliver that kind of quality level. Stepping outside of Blender, looking at something else from the Blender pipeline, here I have Attract, which is our production management tool. And this is structured as a collection of lists, basically. So you have lists for everything when you're in a film production. You have a list of shots, you have a list of tasks, you have a list of assets, you have a list of comments. Everything is a list. And what we did was create a connection between Blender. So this is the Blender video sequence editor, because you can edit video there. And you can tag a shot and say, OK, this shot actually is a shot on the shot management software. So then from the website, you can actually keep track of the status of the shot. Is it in progress? Is somebody working on it? What are the tasks attached to this shot? And it's a great collaborative tool to keep track of what is going on, because the amount of things that have to be done when working on a film is enormous. We're talking about thousands and thousands of things. And very quick, this is, may look boring, but this is our render management software, which is built in a very similar way to Attract. And it does something similar. It takes care of rendering the actual shots of the film. So it distributes the computation that is required to get the frames for every shot across multiple machines and brings them back together so that then we actually can have a film. These softwares are all open source and is all out there in the public, and studios are using them, not just us. But the interesting aspect of the way I am showing them here is that this is actually public. So anyone who is supporting us on this Blender Cloud website, they can actually see us work. They can actually see this out there, which is kind of unprecedented, because normally studios, they tend to be very private, very closed about how they are working, what kind of tools they're using, and stuff like that. And for us, it's just fun to put it out there for everyone to see. And this is another aspect of the platform, which shows really how content can be, the latest content we're working on. So it's very useful for artists to see what's the status of a project, the artwork, and so on. And everyone who is supporting the project, they can also see it. And again, this publishing platform is also open source software. If you have any questions about the technology and the stack, we can of course talk about it. But it's all out there. As a final thing, I would like to show you our very, very last short animation, and then I can take any questions you like.
Aw, Dixie. Here you go, sweetie. Have a good day.
Thank you.